Great. Welcome back, everyone. And we are now all set for the last panel for the day, and who will be discussing the importance of a property operating plan. So before we start off with the discussion, I would like to introduce the panel to all of you. We have here with us Ms. Daniela Voicu, the Director Asset Management of DXP Entertainments. And we also have with us Mr. Shahran Safai, the partner of Afridi and Angel Legal Consultants and faculty at the Dubai Real Estate Institute. Also joining us in this panel is Mr. Ibrahim Ghoz, the Operations Director of Innova. So this panel will be moderated by Mr. Amir Siddiqui, the Senior Consultant of Jason Summers. So viewers, please do note that the Q&A will be held in the last 10 minutes of the discussion. However, we encourage you to post in your questions during the course of the discussion. And we do also have the networking lounge there with an assigned table. So in case if you want to take forward the discussion or address any of your questions or thoughts, do feel free to do so post the session. So over to you, Mr. Ahmed.
Thank you, Megha, for the introduction. So welcome everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to moderate the session on smart building goals. So I'm going to start the session with Ms. Daniela, and this question is more related to around the Smart Build Goals Forum. So Mr. Daniela, what are your personal insights regarding how the Smart Build Forum goals can be applied on a demand for products and services, and how was it managed during this pandemic? What was your thoughts on that?
All right. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to this panel. It's quite nice to actually be part of a group of professionals in the same industry. So I'm honored to be here. Smart goals. I think that the existing pandemic has actually changed a lot of the way how we are looking at the performance and how we can track performance in the past 1 year. So now the customers, they don't just expect more, the expectations are changing very quickly, and we as executives, we are put in a position where we have to change the landscaping to meet the demands and that we are facing at the moment. So based on the pandemic, what I've noticed part of our side is that we had to make a risk assessment for how the pandemic has affected our side in the industry, and we had to look in all the contracts that we have to review and to renegotiate what is effective, the speed and efficiency, skimming down to a sessional service only, and the KPIs. We had to cut a lot of the maintenance cycles to reduce costs. We had to cut a lot of the manpower to keep a maintenance body only, but to make sure that the assets are maintained. We had to have contingency plans that have been put in place to make sure that if one company is affected, we can still keep the business continuity. And the employees itself, they cannot be measured on the existing performance with the normal KPIs that were set at the beginning of the year. So we had to readjust it to cluster more responsibilities for most of the employees and to actually have the outcome based on how responsible and how empowered they are to actually resolve issues to retain the customers on our side. So yes, cutting costs.
How did you? Yeah. Go ahead, Daniela.
Cutting cost was one of the most important areas and keeping liquidity on our side. So we had to do a lot of renegotiations, and we had to set new targets to be more flexible, and this was done with the participation of all the partners. It's a give and take, and in this way we have been able to achieve the company prerogatives.
Fantastic, Daniela. Thank you very much. Continuing the same theme, I moved to Ibrahim. So Ibrahim, within Innova, what measures were taken to apply smart goals within your regions? Say, for example, KSA, Abu Dhabi, and Bahrain, because the situation would more or less would have been the same: cost cutting, optimization of manpower, and motivation, of course.
Yes, for the measures that we have taken, we did not honestly remove people or whatever. We kept on the same pace because we are in a service industry that put us in a demand where we have to continue delivering the services. And especially in our field, we depend a lot on the integration between energy and facilities management. So the energy management is an important part. So if you look today at our business today, the clients are becoming more and more demanding for service efficiency and excellence, while the cost element is becoming a barrier. So the customer look for reactive and innovative partners to manage their facilities and energy systems. So this is why they rely on companies that come up with solutions to meet their expectations, and it has to be innovative solutions. So if we look at the smart approach today, the FM is no longer a solution to cope with the sustainability factor. So personally, we focused on a strategy from a couple of years back to put us into the situation today where we are focused on a digital roadmap. And this roadmap has put us into focusing on four main approaches. The first one is to focus on the digital employee. The second one is a digital operation, working also on a customer, digital customer, and also what we can offer to them digitally. So if I talk about the employee himself, we were able to create a lot of dashboards, internal performance dashboards to measure the employee efficiency. And this helped us a lot in realizing efficiency in our operation. Also, the virtual training, again, today with the situation that we are going into trainings live with the pandemic, so it was difficult. So we have adopted a lot of virtual training using the VR, for example, the virtual reality devices that makes it easy for the people to target their trainings and realize them. If we move to the digital operations, which is very important today and in these days, in order to boost the operation in the industry, we focused a lot on those digital solutions, such as the CAFM system, which is common for everybody right now. But the CAFM does not come alone. It has to come with a PDA solution, which is the personal digital assistance that helps into realizing the KPIs and SLAs fast. Also, for example, the smart glasses, the use of smart glasses in the industry is important, especially that if you don't have the expertise, sometimes you need expertise. And especially in this pandemic situation today, we use it a lot because people got locked outside and we need sometimes expertise to look at the solutions and interfere whenever there is a problem. So the smart glasses, when you use it, you have an expert that is sitting, for example, in Egypt, he can interfere in order to resolve a problem that is in UAE, for example. So that helps a lot in our operation. For example, the drone inspections also is used for thermal imaging and scanning the big high-rise buildings for any leaks or whatever. And the most important on the energy side, which is the upgrade, which is our proprietary smart monitoring center, which is a platform that connects all the facilities. Imagine that we connected everything remotely on a platform where you can realize savings on energy, which is becoming a very important point for the people and for the clients to realize in this situation. Today, we got during this pandemic, for example, we got a lot of requests from clients to reduce the costs. However, just cutting down on costs without a basis is very hard, even for us and for the clients. You need to still maintain the facilities. But when you have an approach on the energy management, for example, when you have a platform that connects you and understand how the facility can be managed with reduced operation, then this is where the platform that helped us, which is the upgrade, to realize this. And it connects with them. We commit with them on a certain strategy of energy management, and we can realize achievement. This is how the clients can reduce their costs, and not only for cutting down without the basis. And another strategy that is adopted, and this is also we are adopting it a lot in our operation, which is called the condition-based maintenance. I don't know if many people have heard about it, but this is the future. This is where you need to depend on your equipment. You need to work smartly on your equipment and read as much as possible from it in order not to interfere with having a lot of manpower on site to deliver a service. For example, if you want to maintain something where it doesn't need to be maintained today, then the condition-based maintenance is a solution. And it has to be connected to the platform. Again, I come back to our HubGrade platform, which is the hub for our operation. So this is where the digital operation took us beyond into realizing what the clients are looking at. And finally, the digital customers means also that the customers have to interact with you. So they have to, everything right now is related to dashboards, everything is related through applications. So we have our Innova application app that connects the clients. They can see the real time for indoor environmental quality. They can see the reports, the calls and everything. They can use it from the platform, from the Innova app. And also we created the Innova virtual operation platform, which is accessible for all the clients, and they can see there and communicate with us. So this, with the digital offer also, you can always connect facilities to the upgrade that we're talking about, and independently, just by interference on monitoring and control, you will be able to save some energy. So again, I'm focusing on the concept of savings and overcoming those constraints with the clients, because it's not always that we need to cut down on cost without looking at it smartly. So that's why I feel that this forum is very helpful towards realizing thinking digitally and more on the smart operation.
Thank you, Mr. Ibrahim, for those insights. So the key takeaway that I gather from the discussion is that the platforms are becoming more and more digitized in order to optimize the cost. And to piggyback on those points, Mr. Shahram, and what legal solutions are currently available? Because with companies becoming more and more smart, digitized, there's a lot of IP, intellectual property being generated. Who owns that IP? Is it client? Is it the management? What are your views on that? So what kind of legal solutions are available currently for the client? And especially when Daniela mentioned that there were a lot of renegotiations of the contract and so on and so forth. So what were the key takeaways for you, Mr. Safai, as a legal consultant?
Thank you very much. So obviously we're talking about energy optimization, reducing energy costs, improving productivity. And this is a goal that is the subject of our discussion, indeed the conference to a great extent. And the solutions that are presented, for example, the app solution, Innova, the platform, is basically software with sensors that feeds data into that software, analyzes it, and then presents it to the customer. That package of, and I'm sorry if I'm simplifying the model, but sensors with software platform create certain legal issues that obviously have solutions. And those legal issues are the issue of data protection, cybersecurity issues, intellectual property issues, and contract law issues. And I'll talk about each one of those in turn. So let's talk about data protection. I realize this is not the most exciting thing in comparison to all this technology that we're talking about. Nevertheless, it's something we have to be aware of. What happens when you collect all this data, whether it's a temperature sensor or it's a light sensor, other examples that I have, virtual reality, or what was mentioned before, condition-based maintenance for machinery or other equipment, all produces data that's sent to the software and analyzed. This data is collected, and the issue with it is that there are laws that require that this data be protected. And that's what we have to be aware of. Although they're excellent solutions from a technical perspective, they will give us phenomenal savings, no doubt, but there are laws that govern this. If the building is in Dubai, onshore Dubai, then the laws that govern this data protection are the UAE Constitution, the Penal Code, the Civil Code, and various other laws. Basically, they say that property developers or those involved with them, like consultants, should take care to protect the data from misuse, from interference and loss, from unauthorized access or modification, which is not allowed. So it's important to engage proper consultants to be able to protect this data because it's a legal obligation. If the building is in the DIFC, then an additional, more stringent regime applies to protecting the data. It says that there's a specific law there, the Data Protection Law 5 of 2020. It says that there has to be a data protection officer. They have to conduct data protection impact assessments, issue privacy notices, etc. So the takeaway message is that these systems are very beneficial technically, and they will help us in managing buildings and managing energy costs, no doubt, as well as other things. But there are legal obligations when it comes to data protection for sure. And I'll run through 3 other topics really quickly for you. The second issue that comes up after data protection is cybersecurity. Now, we've all heard about cybersecurity over the past decade, 15 years. We've heard about the attacks that are made against various companies, stealing the data, etc. And that's exactly the concern here. If data is collected and stored somewhere, then cybersecurity, the security of that data, becomes important. Developers and consultants would be highly susceptible to the risk of cyber attacks. It really only takes one breach of a single device for an attacker to be able to infiltrate the entire network of the property developer and others. And so this is a significant issue which could have liability. If information is hacked that should not be, and it leads to a security breach, etc., you can imagine the things that can happen. And so the law is concerned about this as well. So robust cybersecurity protection measures have to be put in place for tenants, of course, that are there and may have sensitive businesses. The issue of cybersecurity and how that's dealt with is critical. On the other side of the coin, for landlords who are renting to those tenants, that's an issue as well. So the third issue after data protection and cybersecurity is intellectual property. When you engage in these types of things, you create unique information. That unique information could have intellectual property rights. And depending on how important it is or how valuable it is, or if someone wants to fight over it, depending on what the issues are, that may become an issue. And the last issue, which is obvious, is that contracts have to be put into place to engage these things and make them work. And that is the contract law issues that are at stake. So 4 main issues: data protection issues, cybersecurity issues, intellectual property issues, and contract law issues.
Mr. Sharam, do you recommend, based on thank you for the detailed piece by piece explanation and everything. Do you see that does that reckon a change in the hierarchy organization structure? Do companies should consider hiring chief information officer or stuff like that, because there's so much of data being created on a daily basis?
I think
to manage and own this data, or
yeah. I think we're now in an age where data has become a significant component of the operation of certain companies. And it's important that that's looked at strategically to see the benefits, obviously, that's gotten from it, but also the legal obligations and beyond the legal obligations, the business obligations that a developer or other business has with respect to this data. So I think at a minimum, there has to be, if you like, a strategic look at it. And audit is not a good word, but a strategic look at what that data is, how important it is, what your obligations are, and whether you should get into exactly what you're suggesting. Because I think the result of such an assessment will be that in some cases, yes, you will have to appoint a data protection officer and implement all these things. In others, it won't be. But it's important that be looked at, because should something go wrong, the question will be, well, did you look at this aspect of your business? Did you look at this important aspect, which is very much a 21st century concern? And so that is the consequence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sharam. Daniela, moving on to your risk assessment and all the steps that you in your capacity took to ensure some kind of cost management during pandemic. Now, what are the key takeaways from the pandemic? What kind of competitive advantage that organization or an asset company can achieve apply to manage a huge entertainment complex? So your insights will be very valuable here.
What I would like to say, I know that probably during this time, we all become a little bit more legal, and we all had to look into contracts and into clauses that we have never experienced before. like force majeure, insurance coverage, terminations of the contracts, how flexible every single contract is. And we have given our legal departments quite a lot of headaches. But on the other hand, as property managers and as operation, we have been incentivized to reduce costs as much as possible and to make the property work and to make it efficient as much as possible. So this too in itself has become a little bit of a moving forward with a lot of positive points and a lot of negative points. What I mean is a lot of people have started to actually work from home, and we have learned that all these platforms that initially we have implemented, at one point we had more than 30 systems that we actually used to have in the company. Most of them have not been utilized fully. Now has become suddenly something that you cannot live without. By example, because everybody was stranded home, we had to have adopt signatures where every single document has to be signed online so we can actually keep the processes going. We had to have the trainings done online because we had to make sure that wherever the employees are in the country or outside, we had to have them ready for the reopenings. And this has created a little bit more flexibility on how we are doing the things and the time frames. And on the other hand, has created a lot of gaps, like we have heard from Mr. Safai, that has to be addressed. DTCM and DM has been pivotal in providing circulars and guidelines for achieving the stamp of approval, for opening and keeping the businesses open, which in itself had a lot of points that were quite difficult to implement, considering that most of the management was working from home. But because we have involved the employees in the process to achieving these milestones, they have become more empowered. And this includes also the service providers, because at one point in time, we depended more on the service providers than on our employees not being on site. So we had become one team, and we had to empower them. We had to train them on how they will pass on the customer journey to our visitors. And in this platform, they have to avoid redirection, and they have to have advocacy for saying something simple like, let's see how we can resolve this issue, because a lot of concerns have been brought up by this pandemic that we never heard before. So instead of just pushing the customer away, you had to be very creative on how to find the solutions that you retain him on site. So it's a learning curve. I think that we will continue to actually have an organic model moving forward where you can still work from home. I think lots of departments we're going to select to work from home, like one of them being legal department, if we do have the right platforms and give them the right tools.
Fantastic, Daniela. Mr. Ibrahim, my next this curiosity-driven question. I mean, with so much of digitization and people moving from normal to smart offices, is it sustainable? What's your view on the sustainability aspect of this change in the way the operations have been carried on in the industry currently?
Actually, on overall, we can see that this is a growing trend towards more sustainability across the region, especially the MENA. So it started slowly, looking at, for us, for example, it took us 6 years in order to achieve around 100 million dirhams of savings on the energy side. But now with this growth and the demand, it's accelerating rapidly, and we can forecast at least this to double this year. So the focus is mainly, and it's coming from three main key players in the region, and these players are mainly the public sector, the private sector, and also the public themselves. So if we look at the public sector, it is no longer a global goal, but we can see here in the MENA region that the local governments not only want to join the movement, they want to be on top of it. For example, if you look at Saudi Arabia on the Vision 2030, if you look here in UAE on the Energy Strategy 2050, which is focusing a lot on how they want to reach on the energy side. So they have started creating these super ESCO companies For example, if you look in UAE, you have the Etihad ESCO. In Saudi Arabia, you have Tasheed. In Abu Dhabi, you have the Department of Energy. All of these have been created in order to further promote the energy efficiency. On the private sector, because of this directive that the government is putting, the private companies started also looking at sustainability targets and integrate them into their business models. So reducing the company's carbon footprint has a positive impact on the community and as well the environment as a whole. So lack of budget, as I mentioned, can no longer be used as an excuse. There are so many business models in which the generated savings can pay and can cover the initial assessment or the initial investment that is being in place. So some savings can be achieved through pure digital energy conservation measures, as I talked about, the upgrade and connection, which is smart monitoring, and others can be through further investments. So if we look at the public themselves, which is the audiences or the user, the end user, with this growing sustainability mindset and with this media that is growing fast, so companies started to make sure that whenever they commit on their products, they want to make sure that they are in line when they have tangible results for the end user, because they will hold them accountable. So if we take away, we can say that driving the progress in facilities and energy management by offering smart solutions, integrated solutions to the customers, optimizing the energy consumption and reducing their carbon footprint. However, we need to make sure that we should maintain an optimum level of comfort, because we cannot just save energy on behalf of the comfort of the end user. This is a key for the industry, and it is a main driver for it. So
thank you, Mr. Ibrahim, for a detailed explanation on that. Mr. Shahram, what Mr. Ibrahim brought me to notice is that these all initiatives that the states are taking, energy conservation, are there energy conservation, energy vision 2050, 2030? Do you see any liberalization of laws that more or less govern the taxes, charges for energy, or it's going to be the same, because then it has to change at every level?
It's interesting. Before I'll get into that question, but I'll just share something personal with you. So about 25 years ago, before I went to law school, I was practicing as an engineer. So I'm an electromechanical engineer. I was working for a company called BC Hydro in British Columbia, Canada. 25 years ago, BC Hydro had a program called PowerSmart, in which PowerSmart encouraged both retail, industrial, and other customers to engage in exactly the topics that we're talking about, of course, minus some of the technology. At the same time, at that time, 25, 30 years ago, we were talking about condition-based maintenance. And so from a curve perspective and a status perspective, we as a region, I think, are very much behind when it comes to adopting these standards for power saving and efficiency. I think we have a long way to go. The government, I think, and governments are catching up and really realizing that that's something that needs to happen. You know, we have one of the highest electricity rate usages, consumption per capita in the world. And so there's a tremendous gain to be had. The efficiencies that can be realized just by use of very simple technologies are tremendous. And yes, I do think the governments have really realized the benefits of energy efficiency. I think they understand that it may be cheaper to have energy saved as opposed to build another plant to produce that extra, kilowatt, megawatt, whatever it may be. And so those efficient calculations, which in other parts of the world have been made 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, I think are now happening with us here. And so we are in a very interesting age of energy preservation and optimization. And I think governments will be cooperative in dealing with that. They will offer incentives. They are encouraging, for example, on the residential side, solar, on industrial, other types of packages. So I think taxes, in the sense that VAT, for example, or any other mechanisms would be used to try to encourage energy efficiency. But it's something to come. At this stage, it's still very much the beginning of that. But yes, governments have been alive to the issue, understand it has to happen.
So, well, Mr. Ibrahim, that brings me to the next question. In terms of, since we are the highest energy consuming people per capita, what energy conservation recommendations or initiatives that you at Innova have taken? I mean, besides the digitization, which is more making the operational, making operations more efficient, but how are we conserving energy, or what are your recommendations?
Yeah.
I'm from hospitality, so for me, the utility cost for some hotels, for example, where I take air conditioning from a central cooling unit, it runs to about 20% of my total revenue. Otherwise, it is about 8 to 12%. So it is eating up from my GOP. But we don't know how to conserve energy, because 70% of my energy is fixed, 30% is only variable. I still have to heat, I still have to cool my lobby, I still have to cool my rooms, whether I have a guest or I don't have a guest. So your insights there will be very valuable across all asset classes.
Yeah. As Mr. Sharam just mentioned, that yes, maybe the region is still behind, and he said that 25 years back they were doing the condition-based maintenance, which I agree with you. I've heard one time an example with a Singaporean company. They came and presented. They said they were managing a total city with 6 people. So it's just because they are really connecting everything and they are reading. So imagine that a city is managed by 6 people, means they can interfere. So it was amazing. So for Innova, we are, since 2002, it has been established. It's a joint venture between Majid Al Futtaim and Veolia. So from the beginning, when we started work, because we come from a background also of Veolia being the energy leader, so in our DNA, we started integrating the energy efficiency with the facilities management service. This is our main target that started from the beginning. So when the ESCO, which is the energy saving company model, started to grow, we were the first to be accredited in Dubai. And we got the first EPC contract, for example, in Dubai with Etihad ESCO, the first one also in Department of Energy in Dubai, also in Ras Khaimah with the Iraq municipality, and in Saudi Arabia. So we started adopting this from the beginning because we had the system in place. So that system is our energy approach towards saving the energy, and I will talk about it in a while. So we can see today that the trend for more FM providers to started realizing that there is an endless potential in this field, and they want to make sure that they benefit from it, and they will help on the existing buildings or on the new buildings to help in saving the energy. So the concept of integrating energy with MM can guarantee for you efficiency with two main models. Either you can have something what we call in our industry a zero capex approach, means you don't need to invest. All what you need is to do the proper control, do the proper maintenance. In this way, you can save. We have realized with many projects, even with our partner Majid Al Futtaim, we have realized with only connection on the upgrade between 3 to 10%. So is a function that whenever you integrate it, you can guarantee savings automatically. You just need to analyze. And this is when Mr. Sharam also spoke about analyzing the data and looking out of it and use it in order to save the energy. The other approach is when you want really to go aggressive on the market and you need to invest and create some kind of retrofitting into the building in order to achieve savings. So that capital investment, you can recover it back from the savings that you realize over a certain period of time. And this can be realized again. You cannot just install something and say, okay, I installed this, means I'm saving energy. You need, again, a platform. You need to show to your clients the transparency of this information and how you analyze it in order to show them a difference between before and after. And this is realized through a platform. And this is also realized through analysis. So you need to show dashboards. You need to show how the equipment are functioning and how much your energy has dropped with real figures. So if I want just to remind the concept of the energy management or energy conservation, how it starts, you need first of all to do some kind of an audit to the facility to understand how the facility is structured and what are the systems, and start creating your baseline for the comparison. Means say 2019 in my baseline, and after that I will start comparing the energy before and after. Once you set the baseline and you select your conservation measures, which we call them ECMs, this is where you come to the client and say, I will propose to you those ECMs. This will cost you, this will cost this much. I can invest or you can invest. We have the model. At the end, the coverage of this investment will be from the savings that I'm going to generate. And these savings are guaranteed. So these ESCO companies, they have to commit. They cannot just say, I'm saving without even knowing how much, saying that I cannot save. This is how it is. So it has to be with a commitment, and usually we do it through performance bonds, energy saving bonds to guarantee to the client. So after the contract is signed and you have to start executing the retrofitting elements that you have allocated, then this is where you go into the measurement and verification. Again, the measurement and verification is a transparent mode between you and your client to show him the real time savings and comparison with your baseline. And also, you have to provide maintenance to this measures that you have taken, because not maintaining them means you might end up not saving and you will be under risk because you have committed with those savings. So in that model, you have two types of models. Either, as I said, the client can invest, so all the savings goes to him because he is investing, or the ESCO company can invest by themselves and the savings come first to them. So the government usually prefer themselves to invest, so all the savings goes to them. In the private sector, we can adopt two strategies, either something called guaranteed savings with 100% reimbursement to the service provider in order to recover his investments, or it can be something called shared saving model, where the client would like to see from day one those savings. So he can take, let's say, 20% at the beginning and 80% can come to the ESCO company in order to recover their investment. And after a certain period of time, then this is what the client can take fully because he will recover. So that solution can guarantee for you. In the hospitality sector, for example, we have worked with Majid Futtaim hotels. We are doing for them retrofitting for almost 10 hotels, where we have adopted so many solutions to reduce the energy. That's why you divert the focus on just cutting on maintenance cost or terminating people, because your utility bill is really very big. So you need to tackle those elements. And on the maintenance, again, on the maintenance, when we talk about the condition-based maintenance, the condition-based maintenance itself can reduce your manpower allocation to the site, and you can just read from there and interfere. Clients can come and always oblige us to say, you will do every month, I want you to clean this filter. But maybe every month I don't need to clean it. Maybe I need to clean it every 3 months. So if I connect it with this IoT and with this platform that we're talking about, which is also, this is a smart approach. You will reduce your manpower on site. The client can benefit from a reduction on the cost because I'm gonna charge him less because I'm gonna put less people. And in this way, I can guarantee a more operational factor that guarantees for him the proper maintenance, preserving the assets, and also reduced cost. So that approach is what we are having today.
Thank you. Daniela, this will be the last question to the panel now. So I just want to ask you, what operational policies or standard operating procedures, I mean, how can SOPs can influence SMART goals? And is there any test case or case study in DXP that you might have undertaken?
So currently we are in the process of reviewing pretty much all the policies because of all the highlights that have come to light because of this pandemic. I think that Mr. Shafai has already addressed some of them, like data governance and data security policies that we are reviewing at the moment. We do have professional indemnity, media liability policies to cover. In the same time, we have reviewed most of the contracts. The contract itself, we have to ensure that if they had a continuity in services, have to be flexible at the moment and see how we can provide flexibility within the contracts without being liable for the if we do not pay. So we have inclusion of, in the employee contracts, we have smart targets right now. So instead of actually having an employee measured on attendance and so on, you measure it on sales, on how much he is the retention of the employees and how he can contribute to the retention, or to make through the social media to have influence on how much market he can bring to the site. Regulatory compliance policies have changed dramatically. We do have now COVID-19 regulation in all our services, from the work permits that are coming in to include it in all the contracts, that they have to actually meet the requirements. Hours of work as well is another flexible area that we are looking into. So the employees' contracts, if they can work remotely, in this case, it's a more like a performance-based contract. So the SOPs are changing on this line. You have to deliver instead of how much time you are working in an office. I think that we're going to have operationally a lot of changes that will become permanent. So in such areas like online bookings, like self-orders placings, where the customer journey is from beginning to end is going to be set by himself or herself. Restaurants, we're going to be booked by apps. We have edit sensors for equipment, so we don't open the doors. So a lot of SOPs in every single sector of the every single department has changed, and we are actually making this journey together, because this implies that also the IT, the approvals, the DOA has to change, and it's a tedious process to actually make it to the end. But we are currently starting, and I think it's going to end up saving a lot of cost. Now, in the same thing also, most of the contracts have changed. Why? Because although we would like to actually have the condition-based maintenance for assets, what we have noticed that we have to have savings. So we are including flexibility in the contracts, and we have to see where cost we're going to mitigate it by just closing areas moving forward, or reshuffling the type of buildings, how we are
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Daniela.
Thank you.
Mr. Sharam, I just need your insights on force majeure, because when the pandemic started, force majeure, I mean, is pandemic is part of force majeure, or is it not? Because it was not initially declared as pandemic, so the insurance companies were quite reluctant. So what's your take on it, very briefly, because we are running out of time, along with your closing remarks for this particular session, Mr. Sharam. Thank you. You are on mute, Mr. Sharam. You have to unmute yourself.
My apologies. Thank you. We'll end it on a legal note. Force majeure. Does COVID constitute force majeure? This is a subject of a longer discussion, but the summary is as follows. If the force majeure clause in your contract includes the wording pandemics, diseases, things of that nature, then COVID fits into force majeure. If it doesn't, then it will become arguable on the facts, and it'll be in the discretion of the judge. However, in the UAE law, there is another provision in the Civil Code, which I won't get into, but there's another provision which can be used to argue, which is not force majeure, but it's similar, something that would have to cause serious harm to your business. That can be used before the courts to say, this is not force majeure. It's not written in my force majeure that pandemics, etc., are force majeure. But I want to argue that this event that has happened has caused such a serious harm to my business, such a significant loss, that it should be considered as a significant event. And so that's another principle of law under UAE law, certainly, that can be used in courts or arbitration to deal with COVID. And it has been used successfully, both in arbitrations as well as in courts. So people should know that there are available remedies with respect to COVID and legal solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Sharam. I'm looking at the chat section. Donna, are there any questions that you would like? Because in the chat window, I see currently no questions. So unless I'm missing out on something. Donna.
Yes, Mr. Amir, I have asked for the attendees to post questions in the chat window since we're opening for Q&A. we're still
Okay.
awaiting to hear from the attendees.
Okay, let's give two minutes to the attendees. If there are no questions, then I will close the session.
I will just ask,
But as of now, go ahead, Mr. Ibrahim. Go ahead.
just for Mr. Sharam, because he's talking about the force majeure. So do you believe that now the contracts will be oriented towards including that clause of pandemic and in the force majeure, right?
100%. Yes. The law is always a learning beast. And so we always learn from events, mistakes, successes. And this is one of them. This is, as we know, it's a lifetime, once in a lifetime, unfortunate event, but we've seen the stresses and strains that it causes on us. And so contracts right now, not just now, since beginning of the year, we've been redrafting the contracts to include provisions. And all my colleagues around the world have been doing that. To capture these types of events and what the consequences are, whether it's force majeure, whether it allows for termination or damages or excuses, obligations, things of that nature. Absolutely, it's a significant event legally.
Thank you, panel, for your very valuable insights. I don't see any more questions popping up. So I would like to close the session. I guess we are on time. So thank you for keeping your replies brief and very, very insightful. So thank you. I wish you a lovely rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Very much. Thank you.
very
Take
much.
care. Goodbye.